So, yeah, super excited to kick off this session. We are, we're going to be talking about deploying VPUs at the edge. And this, is really an exciting new architecture. And I think it's fair to say it's a whole new approach to building streaming workflows, particularly how encoding is done. So you're going to want to listen up. Let me just start real quick by introducing us, those of us sitting up here. So I'll start with out of order, but in order on the slides there. So Shawn Michels in the middle, Vice President of Cloud Product Management with Akamai. So thank you for joining us, Shawn. Next to Shawn is Alexander Leschinsky, CEO and co-founder of G&L. What is special about our session today is you're going to get a few minutes to hear about what Akamai has built and obviously what NETINT is powering, VPUs. But this is all in the context of a pretty exciting project that Alexander's going to go over. He just has like 8 or 10 minutes, so it'll be a flyover, but we're going to be very, kind of real world today. So really, this session is for you to learn, get introduced. We are going to do some Q&A at the end, and to save your questions. We definitely want to answer them, and of course, come see us. We have our respective booths and presence on the show floor. So I guess with that, Shawn, why don't you tell us about Media Cloud?
Yeah, happy to. Whoa, that was loud. So no, more than happy to. So thanks again for having us here. So I think before we start talking about VPU at the edge and why VPU at the edge is important, I think it's important to spend a little time of why is Akamai talking about transcoding in the first place, and what brought us here. And so one of the things that we've been working on for the last few years at Akamai, or when we announced our kind of stepping away from CDN and into the cloud computing space, one of the big questions that we get is kind of who are we going to be and what is our identity? And we've been very forthcoming that Akamai's goal in entering the cloud computing space is to be the cloud for media. And if you think about our history and you think about our heritage, that makes a lot of sense. Starting back with delivery, you can imagine stepping into the media space and really kind of delivering against that promise of becoming the media cloud really starts with the heritage that Akamai has had in delivery. Kind of reminiscing at being here at NAB, I think it was in 2012 or 2014, we came to this event and we told the industry that we were going to help make online streaming as real, as high quality, and as performant as broadcast. At the time, that was a huge challenge. And kind of if you think about the evolution, I think it was in 2015, we hit a big milestone where we did an event, a live sporting event with Hotstar in India, where we were doing live streaming of the Indian Cricket World Cup. And we hit a whole 15 million simultaneous users. So when you think about today, and you think about kind of where streaming has come over the course of the last decade, I think we as an industry have done huge leaps and bounds in terms of making streaming broadcast reality, to the point where today a modern streaming event can hit 100 million people, and most people watch it as if it's television. And so I think we've hit that promise and we've delivered that promise, and any cloud that's going to orient itself for media is going to need that global scale, that global distribution to be able to handle those types of events. But probably about 4 or 5 years ago, what we started hearing from our customers is that offering delivery wasn't enough. That they were starting to look at more complex use cases, things like more complicated live transcoding workflows, things like dynamic personalization, whether that's in ad tech or just recommendation engines, ultra-low latency streaming, that these companies were trying to get up and running on the hyperscalers, but the centralized approach to cloud computing really wasn't working and wasn't really designed for the media use case. So that really spurred our acquisition of Linode. We took this concept of saying we are going to take raw, cost-effective compute primitives like VMs and object storage, put them on the same network that is powering our CDN, and really start offering a new type of cloud to media customers that is cost-effective, gives them the global distribution and reach they're looking for, and all by being kind of open and neutral. And so that was kind of the first part of our journey. And I think that led us to the next part of our journey of saying, well, how does the Akamai cloud for media differ from anything else that you're seeing in the market and some of the others' approaches? we are very much of the opinion and we're very much of the philosophy that we can't be everything to everyone. So rather than trying to build our own transcoding workflows and our own media solutions, what we do is we're partnering with a very detailed kind of and vibrant partner ecosystem, including folks like G&L, including folks like Harmonic and Neospace. So Harmonic for transcoding, they're actually powering MSL5, which is our latest and greatest kind of live origin system. We're partnering with companies like Geospace for ad insertion, and even down to hydraulics for things like observability on our platform. So it's really this combination of delivery, so world-leading global CDN combined with highly distributed computing technologies, along with a vibrant partner ecosystem to create kind of a holistic workflow and a holistic ecosystem that gives our customers an alternate, not only an alternative, but an opportunity to start working on new use cases, new workflows, new solutions they may not be able to get on the hyperscaler. And so when you think about all of that stack coming together and you think about these solutions, Akamai can offer a pretty end-to-end workflow with a combination of our own first-party products and a combination of these third-party partners that I had just discussed. So kind of great story, Shawn. How does that all get to what we're talking about here today, which is VPU at the edge? And so one of the philosophies and kind of one of the mentalities that we have is we constantly want to be solving challenges for our customers. And as we started diving into this stack and we started getting more and more customers kind of onto this workflow, what we realized is that transcoding is still a problem. And the biggest problem being, the approach to cloud, as companies went from on-prem to in the cloud, they started using the infrastructure that was available to them. And the infrastructure that was available was generalized CPU infrastructure, so just basic CPUs. Well, CPUs are not designed for media workflows. They're designed to be generic systems that you can do any type of compute on. And so where you start getting into complications is when you're doing things like live and you have an aggressive adaptive bitrate ladder. And any missynchronization inside of that kind of transcode profile leads to latency, leads to buffer, could lead to a bad experience. So what is a content provider to do? Today, two options. Option one, I buy bigger and bigger and bigger VMs that are still general purpose, maybe not be as efficient. It's going to get more expensive. Second, I try to figure out how I scale horizontally. I create an abstraction layers and I start sending segments to different CPUs, and now I have compute and I have a whole orchestration system trying to figure out how to organize the transcoding workflow. And it's simply not scalable. And what that means to our customer is cost. It's more VMs, it's more operational complexity, it's more overhead. And one of our goals is to help our customers by kind of eliminating the cost and eliminating some of that complexity. And I think that's why we're really excited to start talking about what Akamai is doing with VPUs. So when we started partnering with NETINT and we started talking to our customers in the market, it was really with this goal of how do you drive efficiency? And kind of everything that CPUs aren't are what VPUs are. So in terms of just functionality, they're purpose-built. So they are purpose-built for video transcoding solutions. They're not general-purpose compute instances. They do one thing and they do one thing well. The benefit is through our testing, we can see that processing transcoding on a VPU relative to GPU can get to about 10x performance in terms of speed, in terms of throughput. So that's one great piece. The second great piece is that it's really well suited for live, and it's really well suited for, I'd say, kind of like internal vertical scale. So you can send an entire, 15, you can set a ladder with 15 different transcodes to a single VPU, all the way up to the 4K HLS spec, and you can do it on one VPU. So it's extremely efficient in terms of processing. It's extremely efficient in terms of what you can transcode. And what does that mean for our customers? Well, it's kind of on this slide. It means significant cost savings. So we did some analysis where we took kind of a standard set of transcode rates and we did kind of tried to do an analysis per stream. And so we did it against and benchmarked against our own CPUs. So what would it be to transcode against our own CPUs? We did it against the VPUs. And then we also did it against the VT1s from Amazon. And as you can see, the math that we got from running it on our, what's our a dual card kind of accelerated plan, is the average price per stream is about $15 per month relative to the $72 that we had on our own platform, or the $62 per month that you would get trying to run something similar on top of AWS. And so when we think about the combination of what we can do with the VPU and that efficiency that brings to the customers, along with the kind of Akamai's approach to standard low egress charges and not trying to lock our customers into the platform, I think this combination makes a really unique solution for customers in the market who are either trying to gain efficiency, reduce the operational overhead of trying to maintain their live environment and workflows, and of really doing what we're hearing from everybody else, which is squeeze the cost out of their business so they can start returning to profitability, but doing it in a way that is not affecting the brand, that is not affecting the performance, and that is not affecting the quality of the streams. And so we're here to announce that, and one of the things that we're really excited to talk about is that all of this is now publicly available or commercially available. We have officially launched at NAB our new VPUs. They're running today and available in Los Angeles, Frankfurt, Miami, Chennai, and Melbourne. So if you want to take a screenshot in the QR code, it's great to give them a try. But one of these things that I always think about is it's not always great to hear the vendors talking about it. So obviously, we're going to say that we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But now I'm going to turn it over to Alexander and let him talk to you all about some of his real world experience running with these VPUs.
Great, thank you, Shawn. Yeah, so G&L, we are a systems integrator managed service provider. We've been in business since 1999 and started to work with Akamai at that time. So it's quite a long time that we work with Akamai, mostly for the time as a CDN. So we were really happy when Akamai acquired Linode. We had been using Linode, I think, 3 years before Akamai acquired them. We have been using cloud providers since 2008. So it was great that these two technologies came together at a partner who we trust. So G&L does a lot of work for custom development for customers because we get a lot of very specific requirements from customers. And the reality is, with all the cloud business that we do, many of our workloads still are on-prem, and we have the same cost-saving technology issues on-prem as we have in the cloud. So that brought us to NETINT 2 years ago, where we decided to give that a try. I always favored solutions that are specialized and do one thing only, but that very efficient. That's really helpful. And when we tested the VPUs at that time, against CPU, of course, but also against GPUs, it was a huge cost saver because the cards themselves were pretty affordable. The power consumption was really low, and the amount of parallelism that we could achieve with these devices was really game-changing. So that was something we had been using on-prem a lot. And on-prem means we have traditional SDI input a lot still. It's still a thing. We have 2110 input. We now have NDI input. But we also support SRT input and IP input via RTMP as well. So a typical application that we develop, that we run, is our modular live playout, and we are showcasing it here at the NETINT booth as well. So it takes different inputs. It could be live sources like SRT or RTMP, HLS or SDI 2110. We take video on demand assets that we can use as a pre-trailer, a mid-trailer, something in between. We have some overlays, some logos, lower thirds, and we can combine them in a playlist, and you can move in this playlist to generate a new confectioned live stream output. And we then send it to an output, and it can be a single bitrate output or adaptive bitrate output, send it to CDNs like Akamai and others, and we can send it also to social media networks. And if you take that setup here and you just use one single live source and a playlist that has just one element and it runs forever, then that's your classical linear live playout. So it's a special case of that generalization that we are using here. This is how it looks. So it's not just a command line tool. Everything is API driven. You can completely control it via API, but it also comes with a very flexible user interface. So 3 years ago, we developed our own design system to quickly build custom UIs for customers that still look professional in a way, but that are not where we not have to do everything from scratch. So you have a playlist here. It's just on live. You have a preview and take, and you can just use it like you would use a normal playout, and you don't see under the hood what is happening in the technology that we're using. So we're taking these pieces like infrastructure, on-prem, CPU, and VPUs, and integrate them into something that where you can have untrained operators that can easily work with that. And so like a real solution. So what we do is we take this media processing technology stack that we are using, we add all the enterprise stuff that you need to really deploy such a software in an enterprise environment or in a broadcast environment, like identity. Many of our customers want us to integrate with their Active Directory domain so that they don't need new user accounts. These kind of things you don't usually get from an encoding vendor because they are not looking into that broader scope. We integrated with databases and with security and observability. So there is a lot going around this single piece of media processing that you need to get it really operational and that you can manage it with a small crew. That's very important to our customers. So what we then decided to do is we built everything into a Kubernetes environment. We can run it both on a fully fledged Kubernetes cluster, but also on single servers that run on K3s, which is the single server version of Kubernetes. And that means that our developers, they don't have to care if they deploy on a fully fledged cluster, on a distributed cluster, or on a single server machine. It's all the same to them, and that eases the rollout of new software. And that allowed us to not only run on-prem, where we use our own on-prem Kubernetes clusters with VPUs inside, but also on other clouds. And now with the Akamai cloud supporting VPUs, we could just take the same software that we run on-prem and run it at the same time in the cloud. We have a management cluster on top, which is the interface to the user. So this is running the content management system where you log in, where all the logging is and all the reporting is. And it communicates with the remote clusters on-prem and in the cloud to control what's going on and to report back what's happening there. And we're using a technology that unifies the namespace in that Kubernetes cluster so that the application doesn't really know that it's running somewhere else. It's like one big distributed application, but secured enough so we are ISO 27001 certified, so IT security is always part of what we do. So that is a nice and very flexible setup that we are running. And right now at the show, we are showing something. We have a live stream from the Cosmopolitan looking down on the fountain at the Bellagio. And we are sending that to an SRT gateway. And we have instances on Linode running in Los Angeles, in Chennai, and in Frankfurt, and at the same time on-prem in our infrastructure in Germany. And it's all controlled from an Akamai LK cluster. And that's a very flexible setup that we can now easily fire up everywhere where we need it. And one customer where we used all this together is the European Parliament. It's an opportunity that we've been working on for a year now, and it's gone live in March. So we are doing all of their live streaming infrastructure and their live to VOD infrastructure. So this involves 5 on-prem data centers, a couple of Akamai connected cloud locations, massive amounts of SDI because they didn't want us to be near their own network infrastructure. That's why they just give us SDI. So most of that runs on-prem, but also overflow in the cloud and the management in the cloud. So, and a lot of audio channels. So that's a huge project that we do, but it combines very nicely on-prem infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, the scalability, and the central management. That's a really nice use case here. And so if we just look at the recent benchmarks that we do when we looked at the Akamai Connected Cloud Linode NETINT instances, we did a test with HEVC. Why not AVC? AVC is pretty easy. You can do a lot of that in CPU. But HEVC is where it starts to get complicated for the CPU, where the load is higher. So this is a setup that we often use, a 4-rung ladder for 1080p 50 in HEVC. And we just looked what we would use in terms of CPU. On the left side, you see a pure CPU instance that costs us $0.52 per hour. On the right side, you see the new NETINT VPUs, the medium instance. It's 53 cents per hour, and we can get 6 times the number of ladders on the same device. And your mileage may vary if you have a different use case, if you're not 1080p but 4K, or if you have a mixture of HEVC and AV1. So it depends, and my team has a huge Excel sheet where all of these combinations are in, and it's sometimes difficult to see the ones that are most important. But I think this shows nicely that for the same price, you get 6 times the outcome. And that's something that our customers love because it's very efficient and economic, and that we are happy to now use on the Akamai cloud. So that's what I wanted to show. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
That's great.
You want that back?
Well, it's okay. Yeah, exactly. Well, we have 5 minutes left, and Dan runs a very tight ship, so we need to end on time. Any questions? First of all, thank you. Thank you, guys. That was a wonderful presentation. But any questions? Really? Everybody's so blown away. Maybe since we do have a few minutes, I think maybe an unspoken question is, okay, this is all great, but change is hard. For many folks sitting in the audience, probably their workflows have been baked for years, and maybe I'll throw this to you, Alexander, and Shawn, you can jump in because you supported G&L and others, but. Maybe tell just a real quick, what's the journey to VPUs? Like, what did that look like? And share the highs and the lows. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, so we looked into what do we need on the software side to it, because the hardware is one piece, you need to somehow access it. So we know that, the VPUs come with support for a low-level SDK, and they come with support for FFmpeg and GStreamer. And so we do use FFmpeg and GStreamer, but only to a certain extent. We think that for a commercial enterprisey application, this is not enough. We need more telemetry in it, we need more insight, we need more control. At the same time, we are pretty busy with orchestrating all that and interfacing it to the enterprise world, and designing the UI and working everything together. So we don't want to go really down dirty into the grid of the low-level SDK. So what we have decided to use is we are using a very versatile media SDK from Ideas called Norsk, and that allows us to rather transparently use either CPU or VPUs or GPUs. So the same software stack can move around. We can just choose what is most appropriate in a certain circumstance.
I would say, so I think, Alexander hit the nail on the head. And I think one of the things, what we see is that, we wouldn't want to put the onus on many of our customers in order to do this development. But luckily, most of our customers are using third-party solutions, whether that be a Bitmovin or Harmonic or an Atem. And so what we see is actually that the acceleration of the adoption of that platform will be through those services doing something very similar to Norsk, where the software is making decisions about what to use based off of what the customer is looking to do.
Oh yeah. Okay. So what my team did is they used traditional CPU encoding just with FFmpeg or with Norsk, and we did the same or as similar as possible with the VPUs. Why as similar as possible? Because the configuration is slightly different. It's a piece of hardware, so it does not have all the flexibility that you have in pure CPU encoding. So you can do much more in CPU only, but it's much slower then. So there is some trade-off in terms of the tweakability of what you can do with the VPU. But what we then did is we did VMEF scores. So for all tests that we did, and we have a huge test matrix that went through all the possible combinations, and my team spent weeks to get that up, and it's way too big to show here on a screen. But what they did is they did always an encoding job and then a VMEF job, encoding job, VMEF job, and so we have a huge ladder of where we see which combinations of codecs and settings get us the same or better VMEF score than the equivalent software. So what we can safely say is the ladders and the configurations that we choose are at least as good as the software version in terms of quality.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And if anybody else is wondering about quality and data, NETINT, we have also all of our own data. And what we actually do, obviously we compile our own, we're an encoding vendor, but we really, we have your data, some of our customer data, can't be shared directly, some of it can be. They've said, hey, no problem. I mean, this is our benchmarks. So if anybody else wants to, have a conversation about quality, we are in so West Hall 3531. So when you walk into the hall, turn left, and we're sort of at the end there. Akamai is on the second floor, and you are meeting room
meeting room right next to the walkway.
Yeah, it's there's a sign outside the door, but they're on the second, and you know, you could definitely go in. G&L and Alexander and his team are in our booth, so if you come to NETINT, then you can talk to G&L, and we'd be happy to talk to you as well, obviously. So with that, I think we have to wrap. Thank you very much. You've been a great audience and really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Cheers.